Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. Tony Stark hadn't time meant to discover another universe, let alone a world teetering on the edge of destruction. But when you spend most of your days tinkering with quantum tech, accidents happen. And today's accident was monumental. Stark leaned back from his console, staring at the holographic display that floated before him. The probe he had sent through what he thought was a routine wormhole was feeding back images. Shattered buildings, smoke, the twisted remnants of civilization. What the hell, he muttered, pushing himself closer to the screen. His fingers flew over the console, zooming in, enhancing the feed. His heart sank as the full extent of the devastation came into view. This wasn't too bad just a disaster zone. It was an apocalypse. Entire cities lay in ruin, the sky darkened by the haze of destruction. Figures moved among the rubble, massive hulking forms unlike anything Tony had seen before, alien, unmistakably alien. Tony stood up, rubbing his face. He was no stranger to saving the world, but this was something else. A parallel universe, an invasion from another dimension. His mind raced with the possibilities, each more troubling than the last. Friday, he said, addressing his AI assistant, get me the data logs from the probe. I need a full analysis on whatever the hell is going on over there. The AI's calm voice responded immediately. The data is being compiled, sir. Initial scans suggest the presence of extraterrestrial life forms with technology far surpassing anything seen before. It appears they've already decimated most of the population. Tony swore under his breath. Figures. Nothing can ever be easy. As he paced the room, his mind worked at warp speed, considering his option. He could shut the wormhole down, close the door to this nightmare, and let that world fend for itself. But that wasn't how Tony Stark operated. He wasn't someone to ignore a crisis, especially one of this magnitude. But he wasn't so stupid either. Charging in alone wasn't an option, no matter how advanced his suit was. He needed help. Someone who could handle this kind of chaos. Just as Tony reached for his phone, an unexpected surge of energy rippled through the room. A gust of wind blew through the lab, followed by a sonic boom. Tony whipped around just in time to see a figure standing at the far end of the room, tall, broad-clad in a dark suit with a familiar red tape billowing behind it. Tony Stark, I presume? The figure said, his voice deep, commanding. Tony blinked. Let me guess, you were not here for an autograph? The figure stepped forward, his piercing blue eyes scanning the room. I sensed an anomaly, something that threatened the balance of the universe. He looked at the hologram still displaying the war-torn world. Looks like I was right. Yeah, you could say that, Tony replied, folding his arms across his chest. And you are Clark Kent, the man said, extending a hand, but you probably know me as Superman. Tony raised an eyebrow, shaking the offered hand. Right? Superman guessed that explains the dramatic entrance. Clark smiled faintly. Sorry about that. I came as soon as I sensed the disturbance. Tony echoed, glancing back at the display, putting it mildly. Take a look. Those guys over there. They were not from around here, and they've pretty much turned that world into a wasteland. Clark studied the images, his expression growing grimmer by the second. This isn't just an invasion. It's an annihilation. These aliens, they've done this before to other worlds. Yeah, well, it's sure about to get worse, Tony said, pulling up a new set of data. According to my probe, they were gearing up for something big, and from the looks of it, our Earth is next on their list. Clark's jaw tightened. Then we stopped them together. Tony tilted his head, considering he didn't usually work well with others. Especially not other heroes with godlike powers. But this was different. He could feel it if they didn't work together. There might not be a world left to save. All right, Tony said, grabbing his helmet from the nearby table. But don't you think this is going to be a walk in the park, big guy? Those aliens, they've got tech that might even give your powers a run for their money. Clark nodded, unfazed. I am ready. Tony smirked, sliding his helmet on. Famous last word. The wormhole shimmered before them, a swirling vortex of energy that pulsed with unstable power. Tony, now fully suited up as Iron Man, glanced at Clark, who floated beside him with effortless grace. It still amazed Tony how casual the guy seemed, even when facing the unknown. You sure you can handle this? Tony asked, his voice slightly distorted through the helmet. Parallel dimensions can get a little weird. Clark gave a small smile. I was spaced weirder. All right then, Tony said, engaging thrusters. Let's just go save the world, right? Or the other world. The two launched themselves into the wormhole, the energy swirling around them as they were sucked into the void. For a moment, Tony felt the pull of space and time stretching around him, the fabric of reality bending as they traveled between dimensions. Then with a jarring lurch, they were spat out into the parallel universe. Tony's suit systems went haywire for a moment, struggling to adjust to the new environment. Friday, give me a status report. Stabilizing, sir. The quantum fields in this universe are slightly different from our own, but the suit is adapting. Tony looked around, taking in the devastation that surrounded them. The air was thick with smoke, and the once vibrant cityscape was reduced to little more than rubble. Massive alien structures loomed in the distance, their sleek, dark designs a stark contrast to the destruction below. Clark landed beside him, his expression grim. This is worse than I thought. Yeah, no kidding, Tony said, scanning the horizon, and if my readings are correct, it's about to get a lot worse. As if on cue, a low rumble echoed through the air, followed by the sound of approaching footsteps. High, heavy mechanical footsteps. Tony's sensors flared, detecting multiple life forms closing in fast. We've got company, he said, turning to face the incoming threat. Through the haze, the alien patrol emerged, towering creatures with sleek metallic armor and glowing eyes that burned with an otherworldly light. They moved with a frightening precision, their advanced weapons humming with lethal energy. Clark stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. I'll take the lead. Before Tony could protest, Clark launched himself at the aliens, his fists colliding with the nearest one in a blur of motion. The alien staggered back, clearly surprised by the force of the attack, but quickly recovered. It raised its weapon, firing a blast of energy directly at Clark. The blast hit him square in the chest, sending him flying backward into a crumbling building. Tony's heart skipped a beat as he watched Superman, the Man of Steel, struggle to his feet, visibly shaken. It's a new, Tony muttered, engaging his repulsors and flying into the fray. He fired off a volley of missiles, targeting the aliens with pinpoint accuracy. The explosions rocked the battlefield, but the aliens barely flinched, their armor absorbing the brunt of the attack. These guys are tougher than they look, Tony said, landing beside Clark, who was still recovering from the blast. You all right? Clark nodded, though his expression was tense. Their weapons they were designed to counter my power. Tony frowned. Great, so much for the big gun. We'll have to find another way, Clark said, determination in his voice. We can rely on brute strength. Tony's mind raced. The aliens were clearly more advanced than anything he'd encountered before, but they weren't unbeatable. He just had to figure out how to level the playing field. All right, Tony said, scanning the aliens' armor with his HUD. I think I've got something. Their tech is sophisticated, but it's still running on a central power source. If we can disrupt that, we might be able to shut them down. Clark nodded. I'll keep them busy. You find the source. Tony didn't need to be told twice. He took off his suit, sensors locking onto the alien command center in the distance. As he flew, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. That whatever these aliens had planned, it went far beyond this one world. He pushed the thought aside, one crisis at a time. Tony streaked through the air, weaving between the smoldering remnants of skyscrapers and twisted beams of steel. His mind buzzed as he pieced together what little information his sensors could gather about the alien command center. The readings were faint, but they all pointed toward a single massive structure in the distance. That had to be their power hub. If he could take it out, maybe he could knock these guys down a few pegs. Behind him, he heard the distant sounds of battle. Clark was still holding the line, his inhuman strength and speed giving him the upper hand despite the alien weaponry. Tony's scanners pinged as the energy readings grew stronger. He adjusted his trajectory, pushing his thrusters to full capacity as the alien command center loomed into view. The structure was unlike anything Tony had ever seen. A massive, towering fortress that seemed to pulse with a strange, dark energy. It was sleek, almost organic in design, with smooth, obsidian-like walls that absorbed the light around them. Tony could feel the power radiating from within. Whatever was inside, it was fueling the entire invasion. He touched down a safe distance away, cloaking his suit as he moved closer. His HUD flickered as it struggled to analyze the material of the walls. Friday, any idea how we get in? The AI responded after a brief pause. The walls are composed of a highly advanced alloy. Conventional weapons may not be sufficient to breach them, but there's some weak point in the energy flow near the base. If you disrupt the power source, it may destabilize the structure. Tony smirked. Let's see if we can give them a little surprise. He maneuvered around the structure, keeping to the shadows as alien patrols moved through the area. His suit systems hummed quietly, amplifying his movements and allowing him to stay hidden. The base of the structure was heavily fortified with alien guards stationed at key points, but Tony's scanners had already pinpointed the weak spot. He positioned himself near the power node, his suit deploying a series of small, high-tech explosives. As he set the charges, he couldn't help but think about how much simpler life had been before parallel dimensions, alien invasions, and working with actual God. He shook off the thought there'd be time to ponder his life choices later, assuming he survived this. The charges were in place. Tony activated the detonator and darted back, taking cover behind a large chunk of debris. The explosion was swift and precise, sending a shockwave through the ground as the node went up in flames. Tony's cell lit up with warnings as the power levels in the area began to fluctuate wildly. That did it, Tony muttered to himself, scanning the area for signs of alien reinforcement. He didn't have to wait long. The moment the power node went down, the alien patrols kicked into high gear. He could see them moving toward the blast site, their sleek forms cutting through the smoke like sharks in the water. Time to go, Tony said, engaging his thrusters and rocketing into the sky. As he ascended, his HUD beeped urgently. The power surge from the explosion had destabilized more than just the alien structure. Whatever tech the aliens had been using to suppress Clark's powers was starting to fail. Tony's readings showed a spike in energy near Clark's location. Clark was back to full strength. He tapped into his comms. Clark, if you were hearing this, I think I just gave you a boost. You should be at full power now. I'm heading back your way. Thanks, Tony. I felt the change. These aliens, they were tough, but with my powers back, we've got a real shot at taking them down. Tony smirked. That's what I like to hear. He banked hard, changing direction and heading back toward the battlefield. As he approached, he could see Clark in the distance, his red cape a blur as he tore through the alien forces with renewed vigor. The aliens, despite their advanced technology, were struggling to keep up with Clark's raw power now that their suppressive tech had been disabled. Tony dove into the fray, targeting the alien soldiers with precision blasts from his repulsor. Together, he and Clark were a devastating force, cutting through the alien ranks with brutal efficiency. The ground shook as Clark delivered a powerful punch to one of the larger aliens, sending it crashing into the rubble. They just keep coming, Tony said, hovering beside Clark as the next wave of aliens approached. We need to take out their leader. That command center I hit, it's not enough. We need to go straight to the sword. Clark nodded, wiping the dust from his face. I saw their leader earlier. He's held holed up in the main fortress, heavily guarded. But if we take him down, we might be able to stop this invasion before it spreads to our Earth. Tony's sensors flickered with a new reading, where he hadn't seen before. Hold up, he said, zooming in on the fortress in the distance. I am getting some seriously weird energy signatures coming from that place. It's not just their leader. They've got some kind of device in there. It's drawing power from the surrounding dimensions. I think that's how they were planning to expand the invasion. Clark's eyes narrowed. Then we take it out. Whatever it is, it can be good. Tony adjusted the settings on his suit, readying himself for the final push. The two heroes moved in unison, tearing through the last line of alien defenses as they made their way toward the fortress. The air crackled with energy as the aliens intensified their attacks, but Tony and Clark pressed forward, their determination unshaken. The fortress loomed before them, its obsidian walls pulsing with dark energy. Tony could feel the power radiating from within. This was it, in the heart of the invasion. They burst through the gates, their combined strength obliterating the alien defenses. Inside, the air was thick with the hum of machinery and the strange alien energy that had been powering the invasion. At the center of the room stood the alien leader, an imposing figure with a sleek, armored body that glowed with the same dark energy as the fortress. Welcome, the alien leader said, his voice a low, guttural growl. You are too late, humans. This dimension will fall, and yours will follow. Tony stepped forward, his repulsors aimed squarely at the leader. Yeah, we've heard that one before, but let me tell you, humans, we're tougher than we look. Clark floated beside him, his fist clenched, ready for battle. We won to let you destroy our world. The alien leader snarled, raising his arm as the energy in the room surged. You cannot stop what has already begun. The room shook as the alien leader activated the device at the center of the fortress. The dark energy pulsed, growing stronger by the second. Tony's suit was struggling to keep up with the power reading. It was off the chart. "We need to shut that thing down," Tony said, his voice tense. "If it reaches full power, it'll tear open a rift between dimensions." Clark nodded, his eyes locked on the alien leader. "I'll handle him. You take out the device." Without another word, Clark launched himself at the alien leader, their fists colliding with a shockwave that shook the entire fortress. Tony didn't waste any time. He sprinted toward the device, his mind racing as he analyzed its structure. It was more complex than anything he had ever seen, a swirling mass of energy and alien tech that defied logic. But Tony Stark wasn't turn one to back down from a challenge. He opened his suit's toolkit, deploying a series of devices that began hacking into the alien system. Alarms blared as the fortress's defenses kicked in. But Tony worked fast, his hands a blur, as he bypassed the security protocol. Behind him, the battle between Clark and the alien leader raged on. The alien's energy blast lit up the room, but Clark dodged and countered with precision, his super strength proving more than a match for the alien's brute force. Still, the leader was relentless, his attacks growing more desperate as the device's power continued to build. Tony's shirt flashed red wine. He was running out of time. The device was nearing critical mass. If he didn't shut it down soon, the rift would tear open, and it wouldn't just be this world that was destroyed. Come on, Tony muttered, his fingers flying over the control. Finally, with a surge of triumph, he found the device's core. It was a delicate alien mechanism pulsing with energy. One wrong move, and the whole thing could blow, but Tony had never been afraid of high stakes. He reached into his suit's storage compartment, pulling out a specially designed energy disruptor. It wasn't meant for alien tech, but it would have to do. With a steady hand, Tony connected the disruptor to the core. The device sparked and whined, its energy fluctuating wildly. The fortress shook as the rift began to close, the dark energy dissipating. Behind him, Tony heard the alien leader's final roar as Clark delivered the finishing blow, sending the alien crashing into the ground with a thunderous impact. The room fell silent. The rift was closed. The invasion was over. Clark floated down beside Tony, breathing heavily but victorious. "You did it," Tony grinned, collapsing onto the floor in exhaustion. "We did it." The two heroes stood in the ruins of the alien fortress, the last remnants of the invasion crumbling around them. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the weight of their victory settling in. Finally, Tony broke the silence. "So, you think this counts as saving the world?" Clark smiled faintly. "I do say it counts as saving too." Tony chuckled, shaking his head. Not bad for a couple of guys from different universes. As they made their way out of the fortress, Tony couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't, till that time, they do face something like this. The multiverse was vast, and there were plenty of other threats out there. But for now, they had saved the day, and that was enough. Tony glanced over at Clark. "You ever need help again, you know where to find me." Clark nodded. "Same goes for you." With that, they parted ways, each returning to their respective worlds. Two heroes from different universes, bound by a shared victory.